we speak about four unique features of university that have shaped them through history and which now continue to guide them today. And I wish to, let's say, address the topic through the lens of these four pillars. First, interdisciplinarity. From their origins, for sure, university brought together different ways of thinking. This is not new, this is almost obvious, but it's important to go back to the very roots and source of this approach. I studied the Sanskrit at the beginning of my career in philology. I was familiar with ancient Indian, and I remember that the most important institution there, the 5th century, Nalanda, I say university, it was not university by definition, welcomed scholars for the first time in European history in different disciplines, medicine, logic, mathematics, and philosophy, offering a model of education that was broad in scope and grounded in exchange. Then we jump dramatically later on in the Middle Age, where medieval institutions in Europe, Paris is a very good example, a Sorbonne, with competition not yet solved with my country, Bologna, was the first, we don't know, they say both. In any case, they combine in Europe theology, law, and the liberal arts. And this was the kind of recipe to, let's say, make research, blue sky research, advancing through this interdisciplinary approach. Today, the principle continues through interdisciplinary research, by definition, centers, academic programs that have the scope and the purpose of equipping students to address complex global challenges like climate change, global governance, not necessarily focusing vertically on the subject and the matter from a unique perspective. And so we can say that interdisciplinarity is still one of the main components of the university's DNA today, before AI, and we see it through AI revolution. Second point is innovation. Universities have long contributed, I say mostly contributed, to new ways of thinking and living. Let's think together to the very first university as such institution in the world, which is
Bologna.
No. The very first was established in Fes by a woman, Madame Fatima. I'm sorry, I don't remember the last name, which is not any competence on the Semitic side and Arabic, but what is important that this Fes university, founded in 859, if I'm not mistaken, became quickly the reference institution not only for religious studies, theology once again, but most importantly for advanced scientific and philosophical learning, alongside, of course, a new approach to knowledge production and transmission of knowledge. And over the last century, let's say that this combination of science, hard sciences, and philosophy and the humanities, broadly speaking, has expanded at an unprecedented scale. Let me give you some figures that I'm sure you are familiar with. When Albert Einstein published his well-known theory of relativity in 1905, if I'm not mistaken, around the beginning of last century, fewer than 1,000 publications were the critical mass that the university community produced, and they appeared that year. Today, we produce, altogether, and still with my edit of silent researcher a little bit, more than 2 million annual supporting discoveries that shaped every kind of aspect of life. So just recently, we see that this kind of movement generated different approaches. For sure, you read from the papers that last week, a 9-month-old in the US received the world's first personalized gene editing treatment just to say, and this comes from a very basic, let's say, a breakthrough research publicly funded by universities in the US. So scientific innovation of this kind, in a few words, depend dramatically on sustained investment in basic research. That research which doesn't have, by definition, any, let's say, commercial and or concrete scope and purpose. Third, internationalization. Learning has never been confined to a single place, that's for sure, even for globalization and all of this process we are familiar with. From all the institutions and academic communities I mentioned, the academic DNA was established through exchange of people, ideas, and let's say innovative approaches. And this is an important component to preserve and to increasingly even more strengthen. And it's not the case everywhere, and I'm going later to this point. Today, millions of students pursue degrees outside their own countries. You can say that universities are actually open to any kind of approach like this, but we also see that problems like migration and, let's say, some resistance to welcome foreign students becomes the rules in some countries more than the exception. The fourth component is what I call the most important one, in my opinion, independence, autonomy of research and universities. The freedom to ask difficult questions, to challenge received wisdom, to pursue knowledge wherever it leads, has always required protection. In ancient Greek, I'm not sure you're familiar with the model that was the concept of paresia, which means past, which all, everything, and reo, the root, which is the verb to say, which means saying, speaking, was the common model in ancient institutions like Aristotle universities. And this meant at that time to speak openly and fully, whatever the subject, whatever the matter, and it was the foundation of intellectual life, of the freedom of expression, of the freedom of thinking, and this has shaped the university as a space of open thinking, public reasoning, and critical engagement. And across the history, I say academic freedom to current times has been challenged, in my opinion, has been challenged by political interference, censorship, commercial pressure, and this is a bit a treasure that whatever the scope and whatever this domain we are involved as researchers and professors and students, we must preserve and let's say defend. As universities engage now with new technologies and new partnerships, this autonomy, this independence must be carefully sustained. And it's not obvious for everybody in any place. Well, let's go to the transition now, based on this fourfold lens. These values have been tested and renewed across cultures and generations, and they continue to guide universities as they navigate the transformations of today's world. And that's where artificial intelligence comes, bringing new tools, new possibilities, and new pressures as well, and raising, most importantly, crucial questions that, they belong still to the tradition of intellectual leadership and the freedom of thinking, but they must be reshaped and put under the lens of AI today. Let me mention at least the three of them that I wish can inspire our conversation today and hopefully also have some follow-up for you. What does it mean to learn when machines can generate essays and solve problems instantly? What happens to critical thinking in a world of automated responses? how do we protect human agency, creativity, linguistic capacity, whatever linguistic capacities and language competencies means, which is not simply, being able to communicate using different code and grammars, but it means, most importantly, to be able to provide true semantics, which is the core and maybe the missing point between AI learning machines and the human Chomskyan-based capacity of learning and communicating by language. How do we address this point, which is very much also close to the issue of creativity, imagination in a world where, spaces of learning are increasingly digitized. So these are more or less the three main questions that we have to address, whatever the approach to AI covers. So, and I don't think they are abstract questions, no, they are not philosophical questions. They are a little bit epistemologically speaking for sure, but they are already being asked concretely, as we see from our global observatory, in classrooms, in faculty spaces and campus power roles. Today, across the campus, just to go back to the metaphor of our short walk within the campus, from student dormitories and the libraries and lecture halls, AI is dramatically reshaping how students learn, how professors teach, and how publish and make decisions on the quality of research, which is very much also about assessment and evaluation of the outcome of research, which is it cannot be the same we had before. This is the whole campus story, let's say, the integration of AI into the daily routines of university life. And at the same time, a new building is going up. This is the AI building. I think some of you for sure are part and belong to this specific community. And here we find dedicated programs in data science, ethics, digital governance, also human rights and AI in this strange but quite promising combination of the two sides of the same coin. And evolving strategies for institutional leadership are very much based now on this approach. And here, personally, I think this is where the future of AI is being debated, designed, and it's where we have to question also the future of AI, looking at the challenges and the many opportunities. And let's begin with the very first part of this work, which is the AI building itself, where universities are helping shape how the technology evolves. Artificial intelligence is no longer a distant prospect, whether it's how students learn, how courses are assessed, and how institutions operate. It's raising new questions, as already mentioned. And let's begin with students that are maybe the most involved in this transformation, especially when it comes to generative AI and the use of generative AI for university studies and advancement in academic career. Already 2 years ago, in 2023, surveys in high-income countries found, as our research, that over 2/3 of students use now AI tools for academic work, from summarizing readings to translating materials, drafting essays, or receiving feedback on their own publications or writing. And of course, this figure is continuously growing up. But what I wish to highlight is that these tools, beyond the quantitative dimension, let's say, these tools now offer potential, particularly for multilingual learners or those with learning differences. But they also raise questions about over-reliance, about access, about the purpose of learning itself. Students often describe AI as both a support and a shortcut. Let's say, very honestly, we have data also on this very first service around the world. Something that can deepen engagement, but that also creates some new forms of dependency. And the same consultations made clear that many institutions are still improvising in their responses without shared frameworks or evidence. And that's, the reality when you don't have guidelines and, enough data to base decision for the future. Let me share with you some examples. A review led by our International Institute for Higher Education, which is based in Latin America, in the Caribbean, found very nice examples on this side that I'm going to share with you. At the University of British Columbia, real-time AI translation is now being used to foster more inclusive discussion in multilingual classrooms. And this is an open process, which is allowed, and it's a part, let's say, of the official program of the university. At Zetech University in Kenya, just moving to a developing country where, let me clarify this point, AI is now equally becoming a topic, even despite the many challenges of connectivity, lack of the digital line, all of this. But we should not imagine a world where, the North and the West is running fast and the rest of the world is looking at and observing, oh, these guys are really moving to the future. There is a high demand, a high also, a deep research on AI in the global South, especially in Africa. But the problem, of course, is about the main infrastructures for making this transformation happen at the same pace that is going to happen in this region of the world. Well, Kenya, a low bandwidth A-tutor, which is delivered by, let's say, via SMS, very simply, has helped improve the pass rates significantly among first-year students in STEMs, in mathematics and all these domains where it's easier in that context to apply AI tools, by the way. And finally, at Cornell, which is a prestigious university we're very much familiar with, adaptive tools are being used to offer neurodiverse students more tailored real-time feedback, which is another advantage of having, let's say, an automatic AI-based response. So just to give you in a nutshell, a very short overview of how the integration of these new potential tools for addressing also all challenges is taking place in different contexts of the world. But each of these examples remind us basically that the outcomes depend greatly not only on the tool, but mostly on how it's designed, how it's introduced and supported. And let me say that thoughtful implementation can support equity for sure, as I mentioned, these few examples, but if not, the absence of guidance can really widen existing gaps. And this is maybe the most important point where, at least from our perspective as international organizations, we have to focus and try to support those contexts where the gap seems to be even larger and deeper than in the recent ones. Now the faculty. Faculty are navigating similar tensions. In a recent UNESCO-supported review, fewer than 1 in 4 faculty worldwide reported using AI regularly in their teaching. It's good. I think it's not a surprise, and it's, let's say, a normal pace when a huge technological transformation is taking place. Those who do often describe a mixture, a combination of opportunity and uncertainty, alongside student concerns that professors may begin replacing personalized feedback with automated comments. even while discouraging students from using the very same tools. And this is a bit of the discrepancy between let's say, the two, the bi-directional use and interaction through AI. At MIT, lighthouse for many innovation through the history of this institution. As you know, instructors have used AI still from this survey to generate the variants of problem sets, allowing more time for student engagement. And in Sweden, I'm going to Sweden in the afternoon, not on these topics necessarily, but also touching this dimension with the local authorities. At Uppsala University, AI-assisted tools have reportedly cut assessment preparation time nearly in half. And this is reported as a good, let's say, achievement through the new trends. But this uncertainty becomes especially difficult and problematic when we consider some of the many unanswered questions that AI poses for teaching. So from students to teachers, what does originally mean in a world where machines can generate fluent responses? How do we assess learning when performance can be enhanced or distorted by external systems? And how do we support the faculty experimenting responsibly without sacrificing integrity, which is an important topic for us. Some institutions are starting to offer, let's say, what I wish to call structured support. This is the case of Auckland University of Technology, securing assessment platforms. But this is MIT once again, and the Teaching Plus Learning Lab, this innovation lab, which was established, I think, 20 years ago when Noah Chomsky was a full professor in linguistics. I had the privilege 10 years ago to visit him in MIT. Well, this is a very much easier for this high-level, let's say, Ivy League or whatever we want to define university, but it's very much more complex when it comes to a normal, let's say, standard campus where this tension between teachers, researchers, students, and assessment in between becomes, let's say, the real issue to address innovatively. At the same time, we see clear risks of fragmentation. Faculty are often left to decide on their own how to respond, leading to inconsistency across frameworks, different frameworks, classrooms, and confusion about the use of these tools among students. That's why, coming to UNESCO approach, we decided to focus on what we can do and how we can contribute to this challenge through working on competencies. Because whatever we decide in terms of policies and whatever the sophistication of the new advanced tools available in the campus, I think the most important issue is that both professors and teachers and students are well prepared in terms of their own awareness and familiarity with these skills. That's why we are working now on AI skills framework for higher education. I do believe that this framework can provide also for your consideration practical guidance principles that can be used according to different contexts, also to implement what your chairs on human rights and AI is working on. It means the ethics dimension, which means the human rights supported approach and inclusion. And I think that this is useful for the campus itself, but it's very much useful also for another segment of the campus that usually is not involved in this kind of debate and process. Administrators. Administrators can be part of the equation when it comes to including ethically and effectively new technologies, but can be very much the obstacle to that process if they're not well involved and prepared. we see different kind of challenges, of course, on this side. Let me give you an example that I'm sure you are very familiar with. When AI tools they're already being introduced into admissions exams for admissions to university, in campus planning, in budgeting, and some decisions are driven by the promise of efficiency, by the promise of modernization, which is true, but we also see that these examples not always go for the best. Let me give you an interesting example. The California State University system that has offered already one model of a more, let's say, holistic approach. I think they have more than 20 campuses, if I'm not mistaken. So the challenge is also avoid fragmentation and different languages and the processes between the campuses. And that's why CSU is now implementing a system-wide access to generative AI tools guided by what they call an AI Workforce Acceleration Board that includes state leaders, university officials, industrial partners. So this is a model of governance that must be maybe taken into account. Having said that, I think that the most important point for us is to help close this readiness gap. And where UNESCO, through working on competencies and trying to address this important moment of transformation through an holistic approach, is a good partner to universities and academic constituency. Now, as the very last part of my presentation, before moving maybe to an interaction with you, if you allow me, I wish to spend a few moments on the so-called AI building, which is actually the institution within the campus in charge of steering the direction of AI through education and research. This is about establishment of new academic programs, new research centers, leadership strategies emerging to study and guide artificial intelligence. I think that AUP is doing its job in this sense, as far as I can see from our small, important corner of the chair. And many other universities are very much investing in this part, which is important, of course, but it's also important that this doesn't go at the expense of other sectors. That's why the interdisciplinarity still remains an important topic to bring up when it comes to planning. So in the early decades of AI, let's say university played the leading role, but with their foundational theory from academic research and so on. But today, as you know, some of the most powerful systems of research and innovation are developed in other contexts. Of course, private labs, of course, a big company. I'm pretty sure you are aware of the quite recent establishment of an Open AI Academy. I have the privilege to discuss it with the quite newly appointed director, who's responsible basically for Europe, Africa, and I mean the rest of the world, but the US. And their ambition, as far as I heard, is very much to start within OpenAI, within the company, to design their own model of how AI can be included, introduced within education systems at the higher education level as well as in schools, which is good. I mean, it's interesting to have interaction with these main partners, but it's a point that must be put in the picture, whether for you, especially when it comes to who must sit in the driving seat when it comes to deciding and guiding about principles and not about products. That, of course, is very much the business-oriented approach, and no comment and no problem with that. So, focusing on this point, let me say that still a recent survey, we do a lot of surveys, as you can see, found that, and that's the only way to see how the world is reacting to change, and it's an important pool of data that possibly should be better disseminated by us and maybe well known from other external constituency. Well, a recent survey found that fewer than 1% of AI doctoral graduates, PhD students, let's say, take roles in the public sector, not surprisingly. But this raised serious concerns, in my opinion, about whose interest this technology ultimately serve. I mean, it's obvious where the business, takes the leadership through big funds, through real deep competencies. It's normal that they become the attractor of competencies and new skills and new talent. The question is how this system should be better, more balanced, going back to the history of universities and research centers that should keep their central role, in my opinion, in driving the change and not to be driven by external forces. So I think that on this side we can say, to conclude, that the four pillars, once again, the interdisciplinary approach, the ambition to stay and to keep this international open campus, whatever the subject, especially when the subject is about, the destiny of and the future of humanity. And of course, once again, the importance of, I call it internationalization, but this reminds a little bit to, university policy to hire more students, foreign students and teachers, and it's not the point. The point is to make international cooperation a real asset of university strategy, to play the role they have to play in the near future. And finally, this comes, let's say, by definition as the real essential role of universities today and centers of research when it comes to technology and generative AI, especially about innovation. So being able to anticipate instead of being, let's say, the first followers in the process. And this has to do with different points and dimensions that I hope a stronger alliance, and talking especially to the shareholders in the room, between international organizations, UNESCO first, of course, in my view, and universities and the higher education system could play a decisive role, because it's about, let me say, having this open debate, this freedom of speech, right, as one of the cards to play in these challenging times. And I think that this kind of alliance, which is, let me say, with no invitation, geopolitical, maybe more than political, and it's strategic more than technical one, can be maybe our roadmap to follow in the coming months. So to conclude, as a linguist, most importantly, I don't think that as a standing leading personalities frequently said in recent months that AI is going to hack the faculty of language, this unique ability that as human beings we have to learn a natural language 1 year old. This is, of course, blocking this process, and being able to produce an endless sequence of well-performed grammatical sentences. And this is, about providing semantics, through semantics, the vision of the world we have decided. What learning machines are doing, and my colleagues who are deeply still in this front line of this research, for sure are making incredibly, a bit scary process in terms of syntax and morphology, let me say it. So they are very much learning, and I'm sure in a few years, but we see already signs of this process will be very much faster, better than human beings, only to manage and to acquire competence of I don't know how many languages in the world, the translation and so on, but to be native speakers of the human natural faculty of language. What is not yet there, and what can be maybe another interesting field of research and reflections between us, is the faculty of imagination that is very much beyond a faculty of language as well. So the issue that through language you can design and communicate about reality that not necessarily are the reality that you are being trained about or you are experiencing and directly. And this, narrow space, let's say, for unlocking the potential even more of imagination, more than creativity. I like more imagination, which is very much etymologically the faculty of, let's say, design what I didn't see and what I didn't experience. That's what Imago, not from Latin, is about. I think this is the real core of the human being's faculty of, remaining a human, powerful human intelligence for this century. Thank you so much.